On Monday, February 3, 2003, 27-year-old Margaret Muller was tragically stabbed to death in Victoria Park, Hackney, East London. Despite an extensive police investigation, numerous public appeals, widespread media coverage, and a £20,000 reward for information, the case remains unsolved. Even after 2 decades, the mystery persists. Suspects have been identified, evidence has been examined, and arrests have been made in attempts to find answers. Yet the case has become one of the most baffling in UK history. Welcome to Bad Things. As always, we'll examine the timeline, the facts, and the theories to uncover who most likely killed Margaret. While there isn't much information about Margaret's personal life available online, we'll examine the details we do have. According to UCL News, London's global university, Margaret was born in 1975 in Virginia, USA. She was described as a keen and vibrant woman with a strong passion for art. In 1998, she moved to Britain to study at the prestigious Slade School of Fine Art at UCL. She later worked as a studio assistant for the Slade Summer School during the academic year 2002 to 2003. Margaret wasn't just an ordinary employee. She was deeply connected to the Slade community and worked closely with many tutors, making a meaningful impact on the school's environment. Margaret lived near Victoria Park in Hackney, an area known for its luxurious Victorian homes and artists' studios. She pursued her passion for art, unaware of the tragic fate that awaited her. The day of the tragic incident. On February 3, 2003, at around 8:30 a.m., joggers and cyclists heard a woman screaming for help in Victoria Park. Following the screams, they discovered Margaret slumped on the ground. Her shocking death garnered widespread attention, evoking both fear and curiosity among investigators and the public about what had transpired. Based on her clothing, it appeared she had been there to go jogging. The investigation began promptly, with the police searching the park and draining nearby canals to look for the murder weapon. The autopsy confirmed that the victim had been stabbed multiple times, including once in the neck. The stab wounds were determined to be the primary cause of death, and there were no clear signs of sexual assault or a robbery gone wrong. Additionally, investigators found no evidence of jealous relatives, family conflicts, or a stalker to blame. While the nature of the stabbing initially pointed to a disgruntled boyfriend, this theory was also ruled out. Police initially sought to question 2 men of Mediterranean appearance who were reportedly running at a high pace until they sensed they were being watched. Investigators were also looking for a man seen in the park at the time, accompanied by a woman wearing a green fleece and black leggings, similar to Margaret's. Margaret's father, Mr. Muller, also made efforts to find justice for his daughter. He urged the public to search their hearts and minds and report any suspicious behavior around the time of his beloved daughter's murder. The investigation continued relentlessly. Within months, investigators conducted over 1,000 house-to-house inquiries and recorded more than 1,000 witness statements. Possible suspects. It was clear that the police had conducted an extensive investigation and numerous interrogations, but the killer remained elusive, cleverly avoiding identification. As a result, the family continued to suffer the loss of their loved one with no hope for justice. Despite this, the case did not go cold, and investigators remained determined to reach a conclusion. In December 2003, they began exploring potential connections between Margaret's death and that of another woman, Monica Watts. Monica had been the victim of a frenzied knife attack by a 15-year-old killer known as the Slasher. However, investigators later ruled out the teen killer, as there was no reason to link him to Margaret's case, especially since he was in police custody at the time of the park incident. In 2005, a 25-year-old killer named Duncan was questioned after being found guilty of murdering law student Jagdeep Najran. Duncan's brutal crime involved battering Jagdeep over the head with a metal baseball bat, which highlighted his violent tendencies, similar to the characteristics investigators believed Margaret's killer might possess. Duncan was also known for his cunning, having stuffed Jagdeep's body into a suitcase at his flat. In 2009, investigators questioned a crack addict named Christopher Olokun, who was serving a life sentence for the murder of a young architect, Bernard Hegarty. His crime was linked to Margaret's case due to the similar nature of the attacks. Both victims had been killed in a frenzied stabbing. However, this lead proved to be unhelpful. In 2011, detectives announced an increase in the reward to £20,000, demonstrating their continued efforts to seek justice for the tragic death of Margaret. At that time, the case was regarded as one of Britain's most notorious unsolved murders. Detective Chief Inspector Nicola Wall remained convinced that someone somewhere was hiding information about the case. Addressing potential witnesses, she said, "Together with information already gathered, they could help us achieve justice for Margaret and her family and friends. We urge anyone with new information to come forward and assist us." In 2023, the Met Police's Unsolved Murder team decided to refocus attention on the case, hoping to engage those who believed it was too late to solve the heinous crime. 2 decades had passed, and naturally the public's interest was not as intense as it had been in the year of the tragedy. However, various news outlets covered the case to help keep it in the public eye. While this renewed effort brought hope to Margaret's loved ones, still seeking justice, it did not yield any helpful information. As a result, in 2025, the police once again called for justice. To this day, investigators have worked tirelessly, reviewing hundreds of pieces of information. According to recent reports, police have made 7 arrests in connection with the murder, yet the case remains unsolved. Failed robbery. In cases where the police fail to identify a clear motive, a failed robbery often emerges as a plausible explanation. In Margaret's case, witnesses reported hearing her scream before the attack, suggesting she was resisting a robber and crying out for help. Additionally, considering her clothing, the most likely reason Margaret was in the park that day was to jog. There was no indication that she was called there or had any prior connection to the person who killed her. A thrill killer without motive. Given the brutal nature of Margaret's stabbing, some believe the crime may have been committed by a thrill killer, someone who attacks without a clear motive for their satisfaction and pleasure. On March 16, 2003, The Guardian highlighted the possibility of a thrill killer being involved in the case. Mr. Shatford, an expert on such cases, believed that Margaret was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. He stated, "Stranger murders are notoriously difficult to crack, but thankfully, they are also very rare. When the motive for the murder is the self-gratification of the killer, the fear is that he will strike again." Serial killer Levi Belfield, who has been found guilty of one of the UK's most notorious murder cases, captures attention in this case. However, a lack of substantial evidence against him made investigators change their direction. A wrong target. What if the killer actually intended to target someone else? Margaret may have become an unintended victim, mistaken for another woman who resembled her. In this theory, it's important to consider what Mr. Shatford had initially stated. There's been a sighting in the park on the morning that Margaret was killed of a young lady fitting her description, in that she was wearing a green fleece similar to Margaret's. At one stage, she was seen to be in company with a man who ran beside her. If we consider the location and timing, there are several factors that make this scenario plausible. We believe that Margaret became a victim of a robbery gone wrong. While this remains just a theory, it is based on stronger evidence and statements than some of the other theories we've discussed. If we consider the possibility that Margaret was mistakenly targeted as the wrong victim, this seems unlikely given the thorough investigation conducted by the police. 1 month after the tragedy, officers staged Scotland Yard's largest reconstruction in an effort to trace the killer. This was considered the biggest reconstruction in UK history. Investigators recalled all witnesses from the park to gather further clues. The detectives planned to have these individuals stand in similar positions to where they were at the time of the murder, allowing others to identify any previously unrecognized witnesses. Detective Chief Superintendent Shatford, coordinating the reconstruction, said, "This is the biggest event of its kind in the Met's history. It is designed to fit together all the pieces in the puzzle. We have spoken to over 100 witnesses who were either in Victoria Park or close by on the morning Margaret was murdered. It is essential that we build up a precise picture of all the events leading to her brutal stabbing." Imagine the reconstruction, where over 300 people were gathered, including 100 officers to set the stage, witnesses and 100 support staff to direct the public. If there had been a woman resembling Margaret's description, she would have almost certainly been identified. Now, if we consider the possibility of a thrill killing with no clear motive, investigators pursued all leads. They interrogated various suspects, including a 15-year-old killer who had attacked someone with a knife, a 25-year-old man who had brutally used a metal baseball bat, and a crack addict who had been involved in the frenzied stabbing of a young architect. In an effort to uncover any potential link to a thrill killer, investigators even requested that individuals whose pets had been attacked come forward. However, these efforts did not prove the theory of a thrill killer to be true. Hence, given all the evidence, the most plausible scenario that comes to mind is a robbery gone wrong, as the detectives had suggested. In 2011, Daily Mail reported that after receiving fresh information, detectives believed Margaret had likely been the victim of a bungled robbery. They theorized that the killer had likely sprinted out of the Queen's Gate entrance to Victoria Park, passing the Britannia pub moments after the attack. 20 years after the tragedy, in 2023, detectives made a new appeal for anyone who had seen a man running back through the Queen's Gate entrance to Victoria Park to come forward. In 2025, they remained focused on the same goal, continuing to raise awareness for any leads that could help solve the case. It is possible that, after years of effort, they may eventually succeed in identifying the robber who committed this heinous murder. One person commented on Reddit, "I remember this case. My boyfriend was living in East London at the time. Back then, Victoria Park was dodgy. As a female, you wouldn't walk through it on your own, even in the afternoon. But this was local knowledge. One part of Hackney at the time was known as Murder Mile due to the Yardie-related violence, for example, and it's debatable whether a foreign national, regardless of how assimilated they were into London culture, would have picked up on the cues and danger. My sense is this was a mugging gone wrong, probably by a younger person who got too strung out with the adrenaline of the confrontation and wanting to look like a big man, just stabbed her. He probably didn't even realize he'd killed her until it hit the news." In this case, a possible scenario is that the robber saw the perfect opportunity to rob a woman jogging alone in the park. As he approached, Margaret resisted, and in response, the robber stabbed her and ran away. It's even possible that he was present during the reconstruction but was clever enough to conceal his true identity. What do you think? Did we miss anything? Share your thoughts in the comments.